Well, good morning, television neighbors. So, today I wanted to talk a little bit about an article that came out from a group. It's a website that I really enjoy. It's the Zero Aggression Project. I think it lays a really good framework for, just average people to start, thinking about what a stateless society might be like, and also how, just defining a lot of these terms. If you start getting, a lot of these discussions, they tend to revolve around people spinning around different understandings of terms. And once you establish what the terms really mean to the satisfaction of both parties, then really kind of the core argument just starts to fall out of this and become apparent on its own. So the article in question was talking about the usage of the term anarcho-capitalist to describe a type of libertarian. Anarchy, meaning essentially no rulers, and capitalism referring to a type of market economy that or a type of market process that we essentially rely upon to allocate goods and resources. So the article kind of makes an argument that it's another aspect of that it isn't covered in the definition. Essentially, the article argues that anarcho-capitalism shouldn't be a term that's used because it doesn't really describe what is happening. So this should be interesting. I'm on a sheet of ice here. Yeah, there we go. I got stopped. Now if the people behind me can get stopped, we'll be good. So in the first term, they say that anarchy isn't a good term to use because it's so often associated with, when people think of anarchists, they think of violence associated with anarchy. People flipping cars, setting buildings on fire, stuff like that. And there are other ways to, just because you have no rulers, that doesn't mean that you absolve yourself from ethics. Oh, and there's a little accident down here. So now I know why traffic is horrible here. I'm guessing it's really icy. So let's not contribute to this problem. But anarchy is, I see that all the time too. You end up with a lot of groups that are talking about anarchy, and then they go out and they smash stuff. But what you don't see are the people who are able to deal with no rulers without smashing other things. So the people who aren't opportunists. And really the people who are smashing things, they're not really, that's not a creative discipline. They're just trying to punish people for the views that they had in the past. And I don't know. I don't really know. What it is it's intimidation and bullying. So, like, if you don't like the G8 or whatever, then you go and you have a bunch of riots, and then you go and you start smashing the windows at, Starbucks and other corporate, facades. Because you're not, in most cases, actually smashing the real Starbucks headquarters. So they go and they smash some windows on on a branch office, or they get, or maybe they start a fire and cause some damage and stuff. But that's one of the problems with this kind of thing, is that as an effective strategy, is that periodically Starbucks offices catch on fire and burn down anyway. I think one burnt down in Worthington, Ohio a couple years ago, and it was caused by lightning. So I think there'd have to be a lot more of that kind of thing before it rose to the level of just a casual loss. And so an entity as large as the Starbucks Corporation, with as many offices or branch offices as it has, or branch locations, that kind of violence isn't really even going to send a message to them, because they're already having significant losses on that scale, just due to nature. In fact, they've probably lost far more offices or far more locations to lightning than they have to, some kid living in his parents' basement putting on a ninja, cowl and throwing a brick through the window and setting the place on fire. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. So there's I guess a faction that the article supposes of, well, I mean, they're like, maybe we should try to take the term anarchy back, because I mean, really, no rulers is just, it's what a lot of people believe. It's not no rulers, it's self-rule, which is what we should all advocate, unless you want to sell yourself into slavery to someone else and have someone else rule you. Which, I mean, hey, I'm not one to judge if you're into that kind of thing, but I mean, I just don't see, I don't see a huge crisis around the term, and I do realize that a lot of people get, shocked, and they don't really, they turn off when you use certain words. But that's, if we're going from the dictionary, then we should be able to, just use dictionary definitions and as a way to establish a common basis. I mean, they shouldn't be, they're offended by what they think the word means, not by the actual definition. So, maybe they are offended by the actual definition, but that's another, that's a great conversation to have with them. Is like, why are you so opposed to being responsible for yourself? So essentially, the article dismisses the term as sullied, essentially, which the left has sullied all kinds of terms, and all kinds of forces have sullied medical terms and all this. There are all kinds of words that it's impolite to say in civil society that were once, well, they are medical terms. And then even when you get to like, what we call the various types of meat on a bird, they were called breast and thigh meat until the Victorians got a hold of it, and then now it's light and dark meat. But that's probably going to run afoul. Everyone has to have something to be offended about, so you got to change the variables that stand for the different concepts all the time to keep fools on their toes. I mean, it just makes no sense. I mean, I'm a software engineer, and so you go and you put some kind of meaning or content, and you assign a label to it. So let's say we're referring to meat with a specific amount of fat content, and I happen to label that, thigh meat. Then, I go and I turn around and in the software just rename the variable to, dark meat, and that doesn't really change the contents of the variable. It just changes what you call it. And so when people sit there and when they say it's okay, like if I say, F people who are okay with that kind of thing, people seem to be a lot less offended than as if I actually use the term that all of you know what I'm talking about. So, you should be every bit as offended if I say, F you, as opposed to, the full version of it. So, I just don't understand why, why that's okay with people. Like if I said something, if I just redefined jelly beans and I said, hey, whenever I say jelly beans, I'm going to say what I really mean is saying this horrible, offensive thing about you. And then I walk around jelly bean this, jelly bean that. No one's going to, even the people who know that I've said, hey, this means this, and, they're less offended. And then it goes the other way too. I mean, if you look at the rap community or whatever, I mean, they use the same, words that you're not allowed to say on television or FCC rule words, and they just say them so much that that most people I know, they just they throw them around casually. I was watching a show about all these people. It's called Life Below Zero. And I was watching these people. They're out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, technically they're in front of rolling cameras, but they're in the middle of nowhere and they're just swearing up a storm. They're hunting and there are these little birds on the tundra and they're like calling them nasty names because they missed a shot. I mean, to me, it's just a way of like showing. I mean, I feel I'm more articulate than to swear at a bird, and call it a name because I missed. Like, to me, that's just a tantrum. So it kind of, I mean, I'm glad some of these people are out in the middle of Alaska, but I know that there are people just like it who live down the street from me, and I don't know. I just think it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me to make a big deal about. I mean, let's go and call a spade a spade, But yeah, so anyway, just relabeling words is something that is not really a concern of mine. I think what's important is to get these concepts across, and then then worry about what to call it. But I mean, you're going to end up starting from some definitions. So let's go and, like, if anarchy is the right word for what we're talking about, then let's use anarchy. But part 2 of the article argues that anarchy is not the right word, and he goes on and cites a guy named Murray Rothbard, who is kind of a standard bearer of anarcho-capitalism. Apparently, I think I've read a couple of his articles or something, or people summarizing his ideas. I haven't really read him a lot myself, but one of the things that is helpful though about Murray and I think is that he's proposed a lot of alternatives. Like people are, well, what do we do if we don't have the government to give us feed and fatten us up so we can be slaughtered, then who will feed us? So, he provides alternatives, and he talks about lots of organizations that could come up, lots of voluntary organizations. But the article kind of, I don't know, I think misunderstands that, one of the key parts of these organizations is that they're all voluntary. So he uses in the article an example of Underwriters Laboratories. So Underwriters Laboratories is a group that a lot of organizations, when you're building electronics, then you submit it to Underwriters Laboratories, and then they go and they look at it and they see how it works, and then they try to assess whether or not it's designed in a generally safe way. And it's not a government entity; it's a non-profit, and I don't really know off the top of my head who funds it. I think it's insurance. The insurance industry funds it. And so the advantage here is that you can go and get your product UL certified, and I would imagine it protects you against certain liabilities. Like, hey, look, this isn't just some fly-by-night product. We actually got it certified as being something safe. So if it does catch on fire and burn someone's house down, at least it meets some basic standards of safety, and that's established before it ever goes on sale. I think there's a Chinese version and a European version, and so a lot of the things that you may own that are generally used as a stand-in for just free market concepts. And so maybe it's not the best term, but essentially you're going to have to take into account economic factors of your refusal to deal with leaders. I mean, let's say that the reason that you don't want to deal with any of these electronic certification companies is because you, for whatever reason, are knowingly making horrific products, just to make a quick buck, and you're defrauding people. Well, first of all, it's going to give people a little bit of a warning that you didn't get certified by anyone who plays reasonably fair with this stuff. And second of all, if you're doing that, word's going to get out pretty quick on you, and no one's going to want to, Amazon isn't going to want to carry your products, and because they're setting houses on fire, and I don't want to be a merchant selling stuff that's so bad that it's causing people great financial loss. I don't want to be scamming people as a merchant. And so and then nowadays in the internet age, word gets out on really bad products. I mean, a really good example are the Samsung phones that were exploding and catching fire, and then around the same time they had washing machines that were exploding. My brother actually had one of those. He said, I'm like, exploded? Come on. I mean, people really tend to misuse that term. And no, there was physical structural damage to the housing, the steel housing for the washer. There was so much force involved that, I think it'd be fair to, things were bowed out. There was a great amount of energy that was contained by this, by the housing and stuff. It looked like it exploded, and I wouldn't want to have been standing there. The phones were exploding. They were so bad that it's causing people great financial loss. I don't want to be scamming people as a merchant. And so and then nowadays in the internet age, word gets out on really bad products. I mean, a really good example are the Samsung phones that were exploding and catching fire, and then around the same time they had washing machines that were exploding. My brother actually had one of those. He said, I'm like, exploded? Come on. I mean, people really tend to misuse that term. And no, there was physical structural damage to the housing, the steel housing for the washer. There was so much force involved that, I think it'd be fair to, things were bowed out. There was a great amount of energy that was contained by this, by the housing and stuff. It looked like it exploded, and I wouldn't want to have been standing there. The phones were exploding. They were bursting and catching on fire on airplanes and stuff like that. So it was a pretty big problem. But Samsung is still, I think they just saw an article the other day, they're now the world's largest chip maker. I mean, so one thing they've done is they've diversified, and then also they've been pretty open with the public about ways that they've, what caused the problem and how they plan to mitigate it in future designs. And so they've released a couple of phones since that one that have not seemed to have as much problem with exploding. And the technical press and YouTubers and stuff, they just love to latch onto this kind of stuff. It means ratings for them. So if you're the first person to scoop everyone on some product that's unsafe, then you're going to benefit in the market as well. And that's something that's true regardless of whether or not we have the state in charge or otherwise. I think it's much more likely nowadays that you're going to find out about a restaurant that's unsanitary by Yelp reviews or something like that than you are from a government inspection, which happens once a year, because the Yelp reviews are happening in real time. Someone goes there and then they are doubled over the toilet sick all night, then they're going to go and do a Yelp review and bring attention to the problem much faster than the restaurant inspector when he gets there next year and finishes all his paperwork. So I don't really buy that, that this whole notion that you can't use anarchy because anarcho-capitalists don't really, because they want rulers. They don't really want rulers. They want some standards that they can choose to adhere to or not based on economic factors, but that's not the same as consenting to perpetual arbitrary rule just because there are some organizations out there like trade associations. So I mean, yeah, I'd say that in the article they kind of overlook the whole ANCAP thing of just opting out of all of the regulation and maybe even starting your own regulator. I've talked before, I'd really like I've been dealing with, once again, with some companies, and they do everything via email and telephone, and then when you email them, they say, "Oh, call us on the phone." So they really do everything via telephone. It's really frustrating. I would much prefer to do business with a company that is able to handle stuff electronically, because I don't really want to take time. I mean, I have to vlog while I'm driving and stuff like that. I don't really have a lot of free time to go and screw around, sitting around, talk to someone on the phone. And 90% of the time when I talk to someone on the phone, they're giving me sales pitches about stuff when I'm trying to leave them. I'm like, "Look, I'm firing you." It's like, "I don't want your service anymore." And they're like, "Oh, but maybe you'd like our other service." I mean, if you did that if you were actually being terminated, I think that'd be pretty amusing and ballsy. It's like, "Oh, well, you're disappointed with my services as a software engineer. I guess you'd like me as a project manager instead." It's like, I mean, theoretically that could happen, but I don't. Usually, they're parting ways for other reasons as well, and so they're just like when I'm getting rid of a company, it's like, look, I'm not just getting rid of the service because I don't need the service anymore. I'm getting rid of the service because I don't just willy-nilly change companies just because of a better deal. It's a bit of a hassle to do that. They intentionally make it a bit of a hassle so people don't just flip providers willy-nilly. But I mean, they kind of treat it like that, like I had no other reason than a few pennies different in price. It's like, no, it's intolerable to deal with your company, and I think it's more tolerable and worth all this hassle to go and switch to another company. So yeah, I got something like that the other day. I contacted a company. I contacted directly the person that I wanted to schedule an appointment with, and they said, "Well, here, you need to schedule that appointment with my secretary." And I'm like, okay, I can see that. Sometimes people have secretaries manage their schedule for them. So then I go and I said, "Here are the times I am typically available. Please respond with a time within those selected options that you're also available, and we're good to go." I mean, I really did half the work, but instead I get this email back from the secretary, like after a week, that's like, "I think it'd just be easier, rather than apparently opening up the schedule books and looking at what times are compatible with the times I listed. Rather than do that, she's like, "Oh, I think it'd be easier if you just called me on the phone." She didn't even list any potential options. It's not easier. It's easier for her because she doesn't have to change the way she does anything or do any work until I actually call. But seriously, I mean, I did half the scheduling. I said, I'm not going to be magically. It's not like it's when I do scheduling, it's like these people, they think that like I'm not available, but then if they just are inflexible, then suddenly I'm going to be available, and that's not how it's going to work. I'm not available. I told them when I am available, and then if they call back and say we are never available at these times, then I'm going to say, "Okay, bye, I'll talk to someone else who is." That's how it works. It's not like this thing like, "Oh, I guess I'll turn my world upside down just to deal with your company." There are a million companies that do exactly the same thing, so why would I do that? So anyway, since it's okay for this professional to hand off scheduling to his assistant because he's too busy to do it himself, and I think it probably would have been done right if it were done by this professional, but he handed it off to the B team, and it's not going so well. So it's totally okay for me now, in my opinion, to delegate it to my assistant, which just happens to not actually even be a real person. So I'm going to be like, hey, sorry, hon, I know you want a phone call, but my assistant only works via email. So here you go. You two work it out. And then his incompetent human can tussle it out with my free robot. And if my robot says, sorry, we couldn't find any agreement, then I'll just go on to the next vendor down the list, because I don't have time for that bullshit. I don't think any of you do either. And I think people should be a little bit more, this isn't the 1930s anymore where that's the kind of thing you have to do. It's really, I just love now having digital assistants for that reason. So anyway, on to the third thing really quick. Yeah, they were just digging on capitalism as a term to describe it. They proposed the terms post-statist and let's see, what was the other term they proposed for it? It was it wasn't libertarian, but it was essentially they just were trying the leftist trick of renaming libertarian so it's not libertarian. So I don't know. I just, when something irritates me when the other side does it, I don't jump and go, hey, I have an idea. Let's do what they're doing that pisses everyone off. That's a good way to win this ethical battle, is stoop to their level. It's like, okay, let's focus on existing definitions of words. Let's use the proper terms. And then after we've done that, let's kind of shake the box and see where all the pieces fall. And I think that's a much better approach than what they're doing. So, yeah, let's see. So, the capitalism thing. It's like, I think most people understand that when you refer to capitalism, you're talking about some kind of free market approach or market-based approach. And so we can get into an in-depth philosophical debate about exactly what kind of economic system we think would be a good replacement. But fundamentally, for ANCAPs, it's not really it doesn't really matter what, let's say I'm an anarcho-capitalist and you are an anarchist that supports some other economic system other than capitalism, then if we're truly anarchists about this, then it doesn't really, I can just go and practice anarcho-capitalism with the other people who want to agree to that set of rules and processes, and then other people who are anarcho something else's, they can go and practice what they want. And the cool thing is that we get competition in the marketplace of ideas, as they call it. And I don't know, I think it works really well, because then you can, the whole joke is true socialism has never been tried, and they have pictures of all the people who called themselves socialists and murdered thousands if not millions of people while experimenting with in the name of socialism. But I think it's like, why the good thing about it is, first of all, none of these groups are allowed to kill anybody, unlike the state. And second of all, they can, if they don't believe that it's being tried properly enough, then they can just go and spin off. In software development, we call it a fork. So you're going and you're developing something, and you really see eye to eye with the designers of it, and then all of a sudden they just take like a turn, and all of a sudden you're not enjoying using the software anymore. It's not doing the things that you wanted. So you might still agree on the fundamentals, so you might fork it off of an open source project and then begin your own development. And that's really how we're seeing a lot of technical innovation these days, is we see people who they have just a better idea of how to do it, or they think they have a better idea, so they fork it, and then they see how, where the people go. Do the people use their version or the old version? And it's kind of I think there can be ruts there, where people just kind of stick in the old version. There are a lot of problems with how Bitcoin is scaling, apparently. Some people might disagree with me, but apparently the transactions are getting very expensive and they're taking a long time, and that's not what people want. So there was a fork for a thing called Bitcoin Cash, and it sounds interesting. It doesn't have as many people on board with it right now, to my knowledge, but yeah, it's I don't know. I think it's a pretty interesting concept. And so just time will tell. And, I don't feel the need to go and, have the government kick in and force people to use it, or I don't want anyone to ban the competitors or any of that kind of stuff. So, yeah, maybe, the other term that I was talking about from the article, it was called voluntarist, which, first of all, if you're going to have a political philosophy, it should probably be something that a drunk can slur. Voluntarist, I think, is too many syllables for a lot of people. And it just, I don't know. I don't think it's very good marketing. I would agree, if you look up what the definition of voluntarist is, then I'm probably a voluntarist to some extent. I think post-statist, that's okay, I guess. That kind of looks forward to a future that, the one of the nice things about being an anarcho-capitalist is, to a great extent, you don't have to wait until the state is gone. You can be an anarcho-capitalist to a great extent while the state is still in place. But, there are some things, obviously, that the state is going to come in and bully you about. And so it's, one can always say, well, true anarcho-capitalism has never been tried. But yeah, it's like a lot of it is just a set of ethical standards. So you can go and conduct yourself by the standards, and it's not fair because you've got all the other people that are using the state to compete. But you can kind of set an example in as many ways as possible within a statist system and show people the merits of an anarcho-capitalist philosophy. And, there are all kinds of different flavors of it. There's a really amusing comic strip called Anarchy Ball that I think does a good job of kind of, first of all, it's got a lot of fun inside jokes for various types of anarchist. The guy seems to be an ANCAP, because that's one of his main characters, is the anarcho-capitalist Anarchy Ball. But then there are all these other types, and it's really funny because he even invents new types of anarchists for various political issues. I don't know if he invented them, but the cast of Anarchy Ball is almost as big as that of The Simpsons, I think, at least in theory. So yeah, I think, I used to call myself a libertarian, but I was just talking with my wife today I mentioned something anarcho-capitalist, and she said, I think I may have even told her, I said I was going to do this as a topic today, and she's like, oh, the libertarians in the Libertarian Party of Ohio chat are certainly not anarcho-capitalists. And so, what does that mean? Well, that means that they're minarchists for the most part, it seems. I will, if any of them see this, they're welcome to chip in and tell me what flavor they think they are. I don't really care. I care about the conduct more than what they call themselves. But one of the reasons that I'm not as involved with, I'm interested in their success, but I'm not really involved with it because there's just too many of them. I just don't think minarchism is tenable at all. The problems that I have with the state are problems if they're big or if they're small, and they're ethical problems, and I'm trying to maintain high ethical standards. So I can't, hold high ethical standards in one area and then, not look for solutions to avoid violating those standards in other ways. The local libertarians around Columbus, they were just nuts with the taxes. I proposed that we do a ballot issue. Once again, the Libertarian Party, last I heard, they lost ballot status in Ohio and haven't regained it. And so the way you have to do that is you have to collect an immense number of signatures from registered voters in Ohio. And I proposed helping that by coming up with an issue that people would be willing to sign for, and then while they're signing for that issue, you can get them to sign for, oh, by the way, the group of people putting this issue forward, we're the Libertarian Party. So yeah, one of the issues I proposed along those lines, to get a lot of media coverage and draw attention to the issue, because people don't really care if in general, if there are 2 political parties or 3 or 4 or 6 or whatever, it's not an issue that most people really care about. But I proposed an issue to just ban the taxation of children. I proposed that right now in the state of Ohio, they require sales tax. Like if a child goes to a toy store with their own allowance money and tries to buy a toy, then they get charged sales tax on it. Now, the children are supported by their parents, so they don't need to be taxed to have the state care for them. Now, theoretically, the parents might pay taxes and they might get some services and the child might benefit from those, but there's no reason to directly tax children other than to train them. They don't want them to raise up to grow up in an environment where all of a sudden at age 18, when they're old enough to wield a rifle, they get hit with the extortion and robbery of taxation, because that would be bad for the health of statists. So instead, they want to kind of turn up the heat on the pot gradually, and it's much better to have a child with his piggy bank at the toy store not have enough money, and then have someone sympathetically kick in the extra couple cents so that they can buy something, and have just a couple small bouts of tears from a child on the matter than to start robbing a 18-year-old with a AR-15. I think the outcomes are different, especially when you talk about the scale of the robbery. So and there's another thing too, is so essentially the Libertarians, they objected, and the crazy thing is that even though it's kind of a joke, I actually had people in the Libertarian Party lately who were not kidding, and they responded when I proposed this, well, yeah, but how will we fund roads? And you know what? I got news for those people. The sales tax money raised from children is not paying for your roads. And this is a dash cam video today. You could see what a terrible state the roads were in, because we had like an inch or 2 of snow overnight that everyone knew was coming. I mean, this particular parking lot is neglected, but if you look behind me at the Kroger parking lot, it's pretty well cleared, and pretty much most private businesses have clear lots, and this one right here is the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, which is a state organization. You can see, or a county organization. You can see there's all these vehicles in front of me, these vans. They all have red license plates that they're county vehicles. So here you've got a government parking lot that has not been touched, and then you've got behind me, for comparison, you've got the private business that relies on people being able to safely walk around in their parking lot, and you've got it's relatively clear and safe. And by the end of the day, theirs is going to be bone dry, and this is still going to be hazardous and slippery unless it gets really warm and sunny. So but yeah, just really quick in a nutshell too, I just wanted to talk before I wrap up about anarchy and anarcho-capitalism, and why I think that it's really important that people start thinking about some flavor of it. Is that if it goes back to the Bill of Rights, and they're talking about the nature of our government, like the overarching structure of it, the architecture of it, and it very clearly says that just governments are formed among men by delegating the authority of the individuals to the state. And the problem I have with that is that there are a lot of things that the state does that are good, that that are essentially, it's a responsibility that I as an individual have, and it's an ability I have. So I am allowed to go and do certain things, and because I'm allowed to do them, I can delegate that authority to other people. I can say, well, hey, I can go and arrest felons, so I'm going to delegate that to a sheriff, or I'm going to delegate that, better yet, to a privately funded bounty hunter. So, I can go and delegate it. I could delegate it to a friend. He could do it as a favor for me for no money, or I could delegate it to a nonprofit. I could delegate it to a corporation. There are just all kinds of different ways that I could delegate these things that I'm allowed to do. But that's not why the state really exists, even though it says so in the founding documents. It says that's what just governments are. But I think they had a feeling that what they were creating was not going to be a just government. That's why they added things like the Second Amendment and free speech and stuff they thought would help overturn it when it got out of control, not if. But you only need the state when, for the illegitimate things, which are the things that I may not do and you may not do, and no group of us together may band together and do. Those things would be called, organized crime if we banded together and did a bunch of things that none of us are allowed to do. But, so that's why we have the state, to go and do all these things like tax people and, shoot people to death in a traffic stop when they were not posing a threat and not armed and non-violent. Or the one I saw most recently is just stopping people, accusing them of being a marijuana user, and then taking them to jail, and then having them fight about it for 6 months. Or a more recent case involving a family friend where the guy he had a beer or two while he was doing yard work, and then hopped in his car, and he wasn't at the legal limit at all. But the officer arrested him, and then when the guy bristled at this and said, "Hey, I'm not even over the legal limit," the guy, due to the breathalyzer, then the police officer said he was resisting arrest, which is a felony. So this guy had to fight a felony charge. It ultimately was dismissed, but it cost him $6,000. That's $6,000 poor people don't have. This guy luckily was a fairly well-off IT professional and is, nearing or at retirement. So he apparently had that kind of money to fight it. And it's nice that kind of thing sets a precedent, but, a lot of people are hassled needlessly by the state, and they could theoretically be hassled needlessly by other groups, but we're still going to have voluntary court systems that are honest, to the extent that they're, first of all, you're going to get to choose which court you go to. You're going to get to mutually agree on who your arbiters are and stuff like that for any criminal or civil disagreements in a anarcho-capitalist society. But then right now it's like the police can do horrible things to people, and then the officer gets on paid administrative leave, or he gets fired from one police department and immediately picked up by another one. Might even get a raise, So, and then you've got all these federal agents from famous cases of horrific abuses of federal power, and they're still on the job. They're still working as federal agents. So, decades after they murdered people, and it was found in court that they did so improperly. That's just ridiculous. So, you only really need the state when you want to have illegitimate, when you want to use illegitimate force. For all these legitimate things, there are just a whole variety of ways that people can get together voluntarily and do them. And so what's the best way we've found to voluntarily get people to cooperate, even if they disagree with each other and stuff? Well, capitalism is a good way to do that. There may be a better way, but it seems to be outperforming all the others. And so that's where I would start. But like I said, just because that's the flavor of anarchist that I would tend to be, I'm not here to tell you what you should do. I would trust that you would use whatever system works best for you through your experience. And it would make me happy to see you experimenting with different systems as long as it doesn't affect me. So yeah, even though I agree with most of the stuff from the Zero Aggression Project, I thought that article was bunk and maybe even clickbait. Probably clickbait. But yeah, you can't win them all. So, but yeah, still go check out the site, because overall it's got a lot of really good content, especially the mental levers, they call them. But some of the more I don't know, opinion pieces I disagree with. So I'll be definitely sharing this link with after this video's up, with the guys who run it. They're super busy though, so I don't imagine they'll take the time to listen to it all the way through. But and you know, it's not, I mean, these are just my opinion. I wouldn't say that they're ironclad or bulletproof arguments. I mean, we can go and dig into the merits of whether or not you need to call things a certain way. I mean, there's all kinds of probably research behind how to do this kind of thing. And you know, that's one thing that the guys at Zero Aggression Project do, is they do seem to spend a lot of time researching how to effectively influence people. So I mean, one of their strategies, like I said, if it's clickbait or something, they could have just been trying to start a conversation, though. If I were doing that, I'd be careful about having too much content that's that exists only to inflame on a website that's designed to be persuasive like theirs. But I don't know the strategy behind it. It'd be interesting to hear from them if they had an overarching strategy, or if it's just a simple disagreement. So I treated it as a simple disagreement today, but can't wait to hear what they have to say. So anyway, that's it for me today. I've got to go in and get to work. A lot of excitement maintaining code written in ancient tools, and but someone's got to do it, and I need to make more time to work on stuff in my own time. I was hoping to get to some of that this weekend, but just didn't end up happening. Spent a lot of time with the family instead, and I don't regret one second of it. So anyway, that's it for me today, and I'll see you tomorrow.